Howdy, welcome to week 2 with Pistol. So this week we did end up getting a little bit of rain, so that kind of changed our plans in the middle of the week as it got pretty wet in the round pen. But this was earlier in the week, I believe it was on Monday. So we spent most of the weekend between the last video that you guys saw and this one working over the weekend with the rope. So basically what I want him to do is move around me. The same stuff that we were trying to do in the round pen last week, and you can tell he's got less anxiety. He's using the energy a lot more effectively. I can ask him to send forward and he goes forward instead of backwards or sideways. There he had his head down and that was really nice. Here I'm throwing the rope over his back, so rope over his back means stop, and then rope kind of pointed at his side with my body asking him to go forward means to go forward. We're just trying to get him to figure out the difference between the two. We want him to go forward when we want him to go forward, and we want him to stop when we want him to stop. Everything that we're doing is going to be transferring under saddle. Here you can see he's pulling against me just a little bit. That again will be an issue moving forward under saddle because he tends to want to kind of pull against you, so that would be pulling against the bit. So we need to get him looser. We need to get him moving forward. Here you can see his hindquarters are tight and he's moving him towards me. He doesn't ever kick. It's just a little bit defensive because he's worried about what we're going to be doing. If you notice his hind legs, they move away from me, but a lot of times they move together, and what I want him to do is I want him to cross over behind. So a lot of this footwork that we're doing is also trying to get him to loosen up through his body. He's a very linear horse. He just wants to go forward or he wants to go backwards. So anytime that you ask him to turn his head or you ask him to move his body, he really kind of struggles with that. So we're just working on a lot of different things to loosen him up. Here I'm sending him around again. There he was a little confused and he wasn't sure whether he should move forward or he should stay put. So I just stick with it until he makes the right choice and I relieve the pressure. He's able to handle the pressure a lot better than he has in the previous week, so he's catching on quickly. Here we're just waiting. Again, this will transfer over to just standing under saddle. We also like to do latent learning, which is where we work with them and then we give them a chance to think about it. When we come back, they can either make a mistake or they can learn from it. It's a lot more powerful than just drilling them constantly. Again, here he's trying to go more backwards than forward, and you'll see that is kind of the theme through this week. But the thing I'd like to point out is he's a lot more relaxed, he's a lot more receptive, he's figuring things out, he's trying new things. Those are all things that we really want to see when we're working with the animals. And this is just a lot more fluid in everything that he's able to do. Here I'm trying to get him to canter when I ask him to canter on the line, and he's able to do so fine. If you notice, he's got boots on today. What we like to do is we start slowly clothing the horses. So he had a session over the weekend where he just had front boots on. So this is the first session with hind boots on. And we just systematically go through putting the pieces of tack on him. And then that way they get used to it. If there is an issue with the piece of tack, then we'll know. It won't be, we put everything on him and we're just not sure. Here we're doing lateral flexion. Again, this will end up being our one rein stop. We do like having one rein stops because it's, of course, like a safety mechanism, but we like to make sure that they relax on it. So that way, no matter what's happening, when you do it, they think, great, I love doing this. Also with him, it's just because we need to get him loose through his body. You can tell right here, you know, I've just got really light pressure on him because, again, that's where I would want my reins to end up, is very light. And so I'm holding him in place until he yields. Hopefully this will get a little bit closer to his shoulder over the next week. But this is pretty good. The first week he had no idea and it made him anxious. So we've got him relaxing into it. So now we just need to get him a little looser in his neck and his shoulder. The other exercises get him loose in his back and his hindquarters because, again, we want him to be able to move fluidly. And then that way we'll be able to steer him. So I'm done with working on that side. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rope to reinforce for standing still. And then here I'm going to work on lateral flexion on this side as well. He's got his hip cocked, he's got his foot, you know, he's very okay with what's going on. And so part of it is we're always trying to manage with him. He'll get so relaxed that when you ask him to do something, he's not really paying attention. So here we need him to kind of do both. But he's doing really well. He's a lot more willing to do stuff with me. So here I'm removing the halter. We're going to do a little bit of the round pen work. On the previous video, if you notice, we were able to do like one thing or the other with him and not be able to string things together. Here you also notice he's staying with me. He's paying attention to what I'm doing. He's getting to be a lot more willing participant. Last week when I released him with the halter, he just ran off and went looking for the horses. So here we're going to do a refresher on the round pen. Again, the idea is when I back up, I would like him to turn in towards me and then send away. He's figuring this game out, and so what he would really like to do is just stop and look at me, just draw in. And so what we're trying to show him is no, keep moving. I'm also working on the promptness of his canter. So here I'm sending him around, and then I'm just asking him for the canter here. And so the goal is he doesn't just trot, 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 trot and canter. He actually just eases into the canter, and he's doing pretty well with it as well. So here I'm just asking him to go back and forth and draw into me. Again, he's not drawing into me as nicely as I would like him to, but he is very prompt about it. I would like him to be more off the fence towards me and facing me and just a little more relaxed, but that'll come in time. And overall, I'm really happy with the progress that he's made. So here we're just going to move him a little bit. And he's being nice and responsive, making good choices. If you notice, it's a lot more fluid. I'm a lot more fluid. I don't have to get onto him. I can move in and push on him, and he happily does what I'm asking. So here I'm drawing in. I'm trying to get him off the fence, but if you notice, he drops his head a lot more readily. He's licking his lips. He's really willing to just kind of cock that hip. And so here I'm walking up to him. He does block me a little bit on the right side, but not nearly as bad as it was last week. Here I've got the whip, and I'm doing like I did with the rope. I'm just throwing it over his back. I want him to understand that a whip is just an aid. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's a thing. It's a way that we communicate with them. And so we're just really working on him being able to use these things effectively instead of getting worried about them. So here I'm moving him around. I give him the choice to draw towards me. He doesn't, but he is looking for a place to rest. So I send him again. And again, we're just trying to keep these sessions short. The point isn't to tire him out. The point is to get him mentally with me. So I'm trying to work on drawing him in off the fence where he'll stop with me. And he keeps shortcutting it. He's not coming off the fence. So here I line up and I decide I'm going to help him just a little bit. So I go between the fence, and the idea is he should move those hindquarters away from me. I need him to just basically follow me with his head. So here I'm just trying to get him to move his hindquarters at all. So I grab his nose to kind of curve him around to show him. And so there. So I got him to do it. And then I send him because he's not really with me again. And I'm going to pull him back. Again, he doesn't really come off the fence, so I'm going to walk between him and the fence. His head's down. He's trying to figure it out. So I just, again, ask him to move those hindquarters. I do see he goes backwards first. I need him to go sideways, but there he kind of did the footsteps side to side. He didn't cross over. So I'm going to come back around, and I'm just going to work this until he does cross over with that side. And so he's figuring it out. He gets a little bit quicker in his response. So again, I help him with his head, and I release. I keep it with it until he crosses over, and there he crosses over, and I walk off. And we're going to do it again. And there, he's a little bit better. No, we're going backwards, and I wait for the crossover. He's still going side to side. There, he crossed over, and so I walk out of there. And again, he's got his head down. He's just really trying to figure it out. So here, I'm doing the opposite side, which tends to be a better side for him. And if you notice, his hind legs are crossing over nicely, and he's trying to keep his head oriented with me. We are in the middle of the pen now. We're not stuck up against the fence, so I'm pretty happy with that. So we get a nice pet, make sure he's happy, make sure he's not twitching and he's happy. So I'm going to go get the halter. He has the choice right here to go hang out with the other horses, and if you notice, he keeps an eye on me. He does have some small issues with getting caught. It's not that bad, but I would really like him to at least stand still while he gets caught. And so there he moves, and so I back up to draw him in. And here I pet him, and I go ahead and put the halter on him. Again, we've been able to do quite a bit with the rope work. We did the round pen work. Everything that we're doing is working on having a checklist with these horses. So if they're checking off things on the checklist, we just keep going down the checklist. The first week, it's really hard to do that because they just don't understand what's going on, and they usually have a lot of anxiety. So it's just working on getting the anxiety out and getting them to want to work with us. Here, I'm going to get on the fence with him. We're going to do some fence work. And we did this the very first evening I met him out on the ranch. I didn't ask very much of him. I just wanted to see what his reaction was there. So here what I'm trying to do is show him that when I'm up here on the fence, it's the same stuff as on the ground. So there's times I want him to move, and there's times I want him to stand still. I also want him to start orienting his body where it's easier for me to get on. Basically, he needs to orient up against the side. But above all, it's really about trying. If I ask you to move, just try to move, and trying to see if there's any anxiety with him being up here. So here I'm moving him. I would like him to cross over in the hindquarters, but I'm not going to be terribly picky about it today, because the idea is just the foundation, the mechanics. This is really our first fence session that I've done. So here I'm throwing the rope over his back. Again, that shows him just stand still, just relax. And he's a little nervous about the rope at first flying around him, but now he's fine. And so what I'm trying to do is get him to step up a little bit. Now I can pet him on his head and neck. And again, we're kind of playing around with all of this. I'll ask him to move again. So this one's moving again. He moves his hindquarters towards me, and I'm just asking him to move them away from me. And there he does. So I stop, and he's able to get in a better position up against the fence for me. So here he moves. So I'm just going to move him back. It's no big deal. And he's going to get the most reward when he's standing next to me, next to the fence, and I can pat him all over. So here I have one leg on the fence, but one leg over him. So we're rubbing his back. I start kneeling, applying some pressure just to see if there's any weird spots on him. And I send him again to see if he's anxious about it, and he's not. He does a good job. So we pull over again. And now I'm going to start applying some of the weight. I've got one leg again on the fence. This other leg is going over this way, and I'm just kneeling on him and kind of flapping around a little bit. So he does well with that. He got his head in a nice position. His ears are attentive but not worried. So I go ahead and I lay on him from the fence, and he really doesn't raise his head or do anything. He seems very okay with that. So again, the check boxes on there were pretty good. We could get a little bit better about moving on the fence, but let's go check it out. So here I jumped next to him, which was something again on that first night at the ranch that he was not excited about, but we have been working on the tension in the body. And so he's fine with me jumping next to him. So I go ahead and I get a bucket because I want to see if I can get on something that's a little bit weird and jump next to him and just kind of, again, progress through our checklist. He's happy to follow me. He's inquisitive now, and so we've got the bucket. He has no problem with the bucket. So I just walk him where I would like him to be, and I just get on him as if I expect him to be fine. So here I'm going to do this very glamorous laying over his back. So I'm laying over his back, and again, just like everything on the ground, what I want him to do is when I cluck to him that he moves forward. Again, he's always sticky about that, and so here I'm just laying over him in case he does anything, I can slide off. So I cluck, and he moves kind of sideways. So he moved it all. I'm happy about that. So I pet him, but again, I would really like it where when I lay on him, he moves forward. So here we just do it again. I get on the bucket, I lay on his back, and I'm just gonna cluck and see if he goes forward. And so here I'm just petting him, and he went forward, good boy. And I'm trying to get that one leg, and see, you can see he's rocking more backwards. He thinks about going forward, and then he does it, and that's good. But then he gets to the point where I ask him, and here he just does nothing when I cluck to him. So I wiggle the rope, I just kind of start pushing on him like where my leg would be, and finally he does move forward. So obviously we need to work on this a little bit through the week, because again, I just want, when I ask him, we get it forward, not sideways, not anything else. But he's trying things, he's being really responsive, and again, he's not anxious through any of this process, so I'm very happy with that. So he gets a little bit of a rub, and we end the session on that. That was a really good session for him. So the middle of the week was wet. Pistol decided, even though he had dry options, he liked to go play in the swamp. And so we had to keep his feet nice and clean. And so, yeah, so we did that. But we did end the week. We progressively put more quote-unquote clothes on him. And then we ended the week with being in the covered arena. And we were working under saddle. So again, we just slowly put clothes on him until we got to this point. So here's the first time I'm really trying to work him through his exercises wearing the bit. He's tight with the rope, and so of course he's tight with the with the bit. Here we have these reins, which there's reins, but then there's also this tail end on them, so you can use it as a lead rope. I'm going to use a helper tonight. The idea is, if, best case scenario, I can have her just work through the same exercises with him while he has a rider on him, and that's it. So again, I'm just making sure that he can go when I ask and he can stop when I ask. It makes a little bit of a different sound when I put the rope on the saddle, so I'm just making sure he's okay with that. Here I'm rocking the saddle back and forth, and he's really good with that. So so I'm briefing her on things, just kind of explaining to her what I'm hoping to do. I'm showing her what I've worked on, which is jumping next to him, putting my foot in the stirrup, putting my weight in the stirrup, laying over the saddle. It's just really breaking all those little pieces down, because instead of saying a horse has a problem being mounted, we want to make sure which piece is the issue. The same thing is applying to it's a lot easier to deal with a small problem instead of one big problem like the horse doesn't like us to get on him. So anyways, I'm getting her prepped, and then I'm getting on the off side just to kind of make sure everything's good. Our plan is, if we need to, I can use the tail end of those reins to just walk her around, kind of a pony ride. Best case scenario is we can walk, trot, and canter. So we're just going to see what he does. Again, I expect that he's going to be stiff. So the first thing we do is some of the lateral flexion to show him the idea of bending to the contact, because we're going to just open that rein. So in this case, it's her right hand, and we want him to move his head in that direction and then move forward into that hole. Later on, that'll allow us to do some neck rein steering skills, but right now we just need any steering, which I don't feel like we're going to have great steering on it, but we'll see what happens. So we're just doing the flexion on both sides, and again, he's tight, but he's willing. So we just work on that, and then we're going to go ahead and move into walking him under saddle. And again, it's a checklist, so we're just checking everything to see how it looks as we move forward. So here she's going to flex him, and then we're going to work towards walking, but he's not giving. So here he kind of fights her, and then she releases whenever he releases. So we start walking. We decide to go with seeing if he'll follow me, because he's been doing pretty well with that on the ground. I'm just adjusting the bridle a little bit just to make the bit a little more comfortable for him. We are just using a plain snaffle bit. There's nothing special about it. It's not twisted, nothing like that. So I go to see if he's going to follow me. He does a little bit, and then I just kind of let her do her thing. Aside from seeing how anxious he is, we are also trying to see when they're under saddle if they have anything called destination addiction. Is there a place in the arena that they really want to go to? Typically, it's going to be where other horses are or the gates. We saw some of this last week with him in the round pen, where he really wanted to go to the gate, which also led to where the horses are. It's a little herd-bound. It's nothing that's terribly dangerous, but it is something to deal with. So here he really wants to go to the horses, and he kind of loses track of what we're doing. So we ask him to give on that side, and we do, but he runs out through the right side shoulder. And so here we open the rein, and he goes through it. He is against the bit right there a little bit, but as soon as he releases and gets soft, then we get soft. Again, here he's trying to back up instead of moving into the contact. There are some horses a little bit further down there, and so that's why we end up working in that side of the arena more. And here he gets stuck a little bit because he wants to stay down there with the other horses. But he does turn nicely into that contact, so we walk him around, and again, we're just looking to see, is there anywhere that he wants to choose to go to. If he has a spot, then when he goes there, we're going to ask him to do something more difficult, either turning or, something like that, versus us just leaving him alone and waiting for him to check in with us. So here we do a trot, and there is a horse over to the left that's shown up, and so he's trotting nicely. He comes back from his trot, but now his brain kind of starts thinking about that other horse. So we're changing direction, and he's willing. Again, he's not going forward right there, so we ask him to go forward into the contact, and he does. He's a really willing horse, and he's very smart. It's just he's kind of focused on his rider about 40% of the time, and then 60% of the time his brain is elsewhere. So we're just trying to get that focus in on the ground and under saddle, as well as dealing with the responsiveness, going forward when asked calmly. So here we're walking, and there's a horse right there. So he turns, and we ask him to continue where he was going originally, which is towards the camera. And so we get him to turn towards the camera, and then he goes out to the backside. So we give him a choice to go to the horse again, and he chooses no thank you, I'm going to keep walking, which is the right choice. That's what we're looking for. So we ask him to trot and come right back. He's a little skittish, And so here he gets stuck again because there's another horse there. But now we're trotting. So he does have an old scar on the right leg, and if you notice, there were about 3 steps right there where he did limp a little bit. The old scar appears to be a little bit into that muscle, so there are times where he has kind of issues extending that leg. There's no heat, there's no anything associated with that, so we're just keeping an eye on that. And again, if he goes a little slower trot or a little bigger trot, he's totally fine. There we got our first canter, and it was pretty good. It was going the way that he's a little bit better at. Towards the end there, when he was in the corner, he did start kind of crow hopping a little bit. It's not so much that there's pain or there's any issue. Again, it's just he loses focus, and he suddenly remembers that he has a rider. So he came back really quickly from that. Again, it's something that we have to work on, but dealing with the focus on the ground and on the saddle is really what's going to fix that the best. So here we're working on the steering. He's getting a little bit tired mentally. This is hard for him to have to kind of think through it. I would like to get the canter to the left. Again, that's his more difficult direction. So we're just working on making sure the steering's in place. And I end up having to do like I do in the round pen. I'm gesturing with my left hand, and then I'm kind of waving with my right hand like I would with the rope. So we're working on that. She's trying to keep the steering. Here he runs out through his right shoulder. So she just corrects him, and she just kind of keeps steady on the reins, and then he releases and we go back to work. I'm sending him forward, and again he's going to run out through that shoulder, and we just wait till he yields, and then we go back around. So obviously steering is an issue, and we'll work on that as we have been. So here we get him to canter, and he comes back. It was just a couple of steps in the dark. And here what we're going to do is we're going to use that lateral flexion to hopefully get a one-rein stop. So we're just going to gently pull his head a little bit to the inside, not all the way to our leg. And here he's being resistant, but we would like him to yield to it as he stops moving his feet. So it takes him a little while to figure it out, a couple of circles, but he does eventually figure it out, and Roxanne is able to hop off of him. So basically it was a pretty good week. We did a lot of stuff with Pistol, and he did respond really favorably by stepping up to all the challenges. We obviously need to work on the loosening through the body, through the neck, through the shoulders, through the back, and through the hindquarters. So that way we can do more advanced steering type things under saddle. We are keeping an eye on that right leg where the old scar tissue's there. Again, there hasn't been any heat or anything, and he's fine when he's out in the pasture, so we're just keeping an eye on that. Also tied in with the rain that we got last week, he did keep playing in a mud puddle, and so we kept it clean and dry as much as possible, but it does look like he has an abscess. This weekend is when it started, but it looks like it's going to blow out tonight. So anyways, we're soaking that, we're taking care of that, we'll keep it nice and clean. He should be back in action, probably riding wise I would expect by the end of the week with the speed that it's going. But in the meantime, we have plenty of things to work on the ground, the lateral flexion, and just moving through his body, that him having the abscess isn't going to affect anything else. If it does increase in severity, of course we'll talk to you. But yeah, hopefully the rain stays off and cooler weather, and we can keep moving forward. Thanks, and we will see you for week 3.